thinking this is how I'm gonna die, alone in a hotel room one day.
The nightmares started pretty soon after I came home.
I ended up becoming a real quiet person. I didn't talk to anybody about anything.
Mental illness has many faces.
I just see too many people wanting to just pretend it's not happening. Not my kid.
The monster makes you feel this way, and then the monster tells you that it doesn't exist and that you have no right to it.
Mental illness takes on many forms.
I used to self-mutilate.
I had had suicidal thoughts on and off.
I think about it pretty much nonstop. The hellscape I was trying and failing to navigate.
I popped a bunch of pills.
I felt just like this tightness, you know, everywhere.
I just started sobbing.
I ended up getting committed to the Board of Mental Health. And that was a tough day.
Okay, ready? Look at the camera. Smile.
What I wish.
No, wait, I didn't say go, I said smile.
Mental illness does not discriminate.
You just learn how short life is and how important it is to listen. All right, you're okay.
It's gonna suck. It's gonna be a process, and it's gonna hurt sometimes, a lot of the time.
Do you love yourself enough to accept the help? Do you love yourself enough to face your problems and whatever it is and to get better?
So many are fighting the war within. Mental illness affects us all. Friends, family members may be struggling. Maybe it's someone you don't even realize. Maybe it's you. I'm Laura Moritz for Chronicle. Tonight, 4 people share very personal stories to end the shame of living with mental illness. Because no one should fight the war within alone.
I have obsessive compulsive disorder and chronic anxiety.
Pearson Phillips loved to talk.
And sometimes my anxiety can be so bad that
An only child, he excelled at engaging adults in lively
He
conversation.
was just an old soul when it came to how he interacted with others a lot.
But underneath those beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair was a little boy carrying a pain that ran very deep.
Second grade is when we found out that when he was in second grade, it was when he first had his thoughts of suicide. They had an assignment where they drew a self-portrait and they were learning about adjectives. And his adjective that he wrote was complicated. Now, the teacher thought that was amazing. Look at that really big word. Yeah, I'm not an educator, but I know enough to go, why are you complicated? Why do you feel that you are complicated? His response was, because nobody really gets me. Nobody understands me, nobody gets me. He was struggling to communicate with his peers. He just couldn't.
Hillary made an appointment for Pearson to speak with a psychologist.
And during that evaluation, the psychologist had asked if he'd ever had thoughts of suicide. I wasn't in the room at the time, so she came out and got me, had him play with something, and told me. So I was sitting there by myself going, what? Would never have known, never had known. So we made up a safety plan right then and there. I had to learn immediately how to have a conversation with him. Like, do you feel safe? Do you have a plan? Are you talking or thinking about killing yourself?
sometimes you might not see my tics.
Then another diagnosis, Tourette's syndrome, a disorder that can cause repetitive movements or vocal tics that can't easily be controlled.
I'm still just a kid, and I'm normal in my own way. I have feelings, and sometimes people hurt them.
He'd been having issues. We'd been going to doctors for quite a while. I thought he started having these seizures from the anxiety would get too much.
Hi.
As doctors and his parents searched for the right treatment, one thing did seem to help:
This is my story.
talking.
Tourette's syndrome.
Soon, the little boy who dreamed of becoming a TV commentator was asked to speak to a group of adults living with Tourette's about his own experience.
It was his thing. He wasn't an athlete. He wanted to be on the debate team. He was so looking forward to that. And Speaking was something that it helped him for some reason. It made him feel better.
I live with mental illness every single day.
Soon, his speeches about living with Tourette's became speeches about his mental health. Pearson was 10 years old.
He was talking about what it was like to be a kid here and now, living with these thoughts, living with depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts, and how different it is for them, and how different it is for them now versus just the kids who grew up, 10 years ago.
Someone dies by suicide every 40 seconds in this world, and we are all worth saving.
We as kids need you to take care of us, and if you don't listen to us, and then we cannot trust you. He was just, you need to listen to me.
Speaking about this has empowered me. It has helped me.
His honesty on stage making an immediate impact.
The 20, 30 minutes that we thought he'd be up there ended up being a couple hours. Women were standing up and asking questions and saying, I've been living with depression my whole life. I've never told anybody. So there were so many people coming forward, and just like he kind of opened up the floodgates for them. Like, if you can stand up there and say this, then I can do this.
Pearson was becoming a mental health advocate. At the same time, his own journey was taking him down a dark path. The pain, at times so paralyzing, he thought he could never escape it.
He said that when he felt that way, he couldn't think about it. He loved us, but it wasn't about us. It wasn't about his dad or myself. It wasn't about us. It was about him and his pain, and he just needed it to stop. And he was so clear with that. And I can still picture him sitting there telling me that. And he was just so serious and to the point, and it wasn't a big deal. He just said it.
At a point, I resigned myself and made peace with the fact that my life would be short and end with me killing myself.
Mackenzie Nicole grew up in Kansas City, a middle child with a standout talent, singing. Mackenzie's father, the co-founder and CEO of Strange Music, the world's most successful independent label. On the outside, Mackenzie had it all. On the inside, this supposedly happy little girl was hiding a dark secret.
The first time I remember contemplating suicide, I was 6 years old. I didn't know that there was a better for so long, because I lived my entire life essentially in a less than desirable state. I just figured that eventually I would go on like that until I eventually took my own life.
She carried those painful thoughts through middle and high school, seeing no way out.
It feels like this unwrestlable, unidentifiable monster that you're trying to take stabs at or hit, and it's like this dreamlike quality of never being able to land a punch at it,
To others, Mackenzie was an intelligent, talented young woman with so much promise and determination. She became the first pop artist signed to Strange Music in 2018.
It's our first attempt at pop on this hip-hop label, and that's a lot of pressure.
Mackenzie grew up surrounded by music, making her debut on Tech Nine's song Demons at just 9 years old. Singing to crowds was nothing new. Performing songs from her own album was.
The night before I went on stage, I remember my dad and Tech were like, hey, during that pause when you perform Dark Side, go throw them some CDs. And I was like, throw them CDs? Like, what if they don't like me? What if I'm like, hey, who wants a CD? And everyone's like, so I go over and I pick them up and I hold one up, and probably 50 people were like, yeah. And I was like, you like me, cool, you don't hate me.
Off the stage and out of the limelight, Mackenzie's mental illness was taking control months before her 19th birthday.
One of my best friends had to force me to go to a psychiatrist when I was in the middle of my mental breakdown, because I had resigned myself to suicide. What was the point? Why am I going to spend a bunch of money to be told I might be fine? I don't plan to be. It doesn't matter if you grew up in a good home. It doesn't matter if you have a good job. It doesn't matter what, fortunes have benefited you. This is separate of all that. Mental health does not discriminate.
I really feel like my story is like a happy one.
Jason Kander has held many roles in his life: lawyer, politician, serving as both a state legislator and Missouri Secretary of State, best-selling author, activist, father, and soldier, enlisting in the Army in 2001 after 9/11. He was deployed to Afghanistan as a military intelligence officer.
In the Army, there's a really necessary brainwashing that goes on. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. As soon as you start training, it is ground into you from day one that somebody else has it tougher than you, that everybody else has it tougher than you, that this is nothing. And that's actually really important, because when I look back and I think about the rooms that I walked into, knowing the danger of going into those rooms, if I didn't feel like everybody else was doing harder stuff than me and that my friends were risking more and that this is nothing, then I don't go into those rooms. And that diminishes the ability of our Army to do its job, right? My combat was not a conventional thing that you know, it's not what you see in a John Wayne movie, right? Like, I was fortunate I didn't have to take anybody's life, and I didn't have bullets whizzing by my ears. And you know, for me, combat was sneaking around and trying not to get kidnapped and being scared that I would.
After returning from deployment, Jason couldn't sleep, couldn't relax. Something was wrong.
I heard somebody say that either you deal with your trauma or your trauma deals with you. And that's really what happened with me. I avoided all these things as best I could. I worked like crazy. I would put off going to sleep because I never had a good night's sleep and it was no fun.
With his mental state suffering, Jason tried to block out the pain and anxiety. By 2018, this rising star in the Democratic Party was considering a run for the presidency.
I was running all over the country getting ready to run for president, and frankly, it was going pretty well. And that's the direction I was headed in. And the overwhelming feeling I had was like, something is wrong.
Give a good New Hampshire welcome to President of Let America Vote, Jason Kander.
I keynoted the biggest annual fundraiser of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. The year before me, it was Joe Biden. The year after me, it was Elizabeth Warren. It was on national TV, and my parents watched it at home.
That there are so many Americans for whom their earliest memories are that emotion of feeling let down by the people in charge who were supposed to look out for them. And they are the reason that I am in public service, not to follow public opinion polls, but to change them.
And that really should have been a crescendo, amazing moment for me, and it felt good while I was doing it. But I remember being really struck by how, in the days that followed, like I didn't feel anything.
Still to come on Chronicle. No matter who you are or where you come from.
Yeah, you're not gonna talk your way out of this. You need help. You are hereby committed to the Board of Mental Health, and boom, boom, boom. I was stuck after that.
No one is immune from mental illness, and the number of people affected is growing.
A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of substance abuse. People who have been sober for years now are relapsing.
If you need help, reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at the number on your screen. You can also find a list of local resources right now at kmbc.com. He is known by the name King ISO.
Sometimes you gotta talk for the ones who...
A rap artist breaking hip-hop stereotypes.
Who ain't here.
And ending the stigma surrounding mental health.
So I'm gonna talk for him. I never wanted to kill myself, just end a part of me.
Rather than feeling like I want to kill myself, it's, It's more so, you know, just killing that part off, a specific part of me.
I don't know, just the thought that I sit with. Suicide dog, call it a dishes.
The breakout song on his 2020 album is Audacious, suicide spelled backward. But before signing to a label, before the fans and the music, King ISO was Terrell Gulledge. A kid from the East Coast growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, his mother serving in the Navy.
She really, really, really stayed on her stuff no matter what. Like, we never really went without. I never met my real father. Like, a day in my life, I didn't know him.
Darkness and anxiety was part of his life from the start.
My mom told me, she told me that as a baby, she said I always had like an obsession with like death. She said one day when I was like 2 years old, I went and laid in the middle of the street and tried to get hit by a car or something like that.
Because it happened to me and I think so many before. These are bars for the deserving of imprisonment, bro. And I think I was busy minding my business, you know. Playing Sega Genesis, eating a cinnamon roll.
His internal hurt intensifying as a young child when Terrell says he was molested by a family member.
I was a little bit young, I want to say like 9, 10. Around that time, I ended up, you know, being touched, you know what I mean, by one of my relatives. So that really messed me up.
Let the children say, where was my mommy? Where was my dad? They were feeling like, where were my parents? Oh, I'm so sad.
At the time, like, I'm an A+ student. You know, I was always on the honor roll. I did stuff like that. But it was like, once I got out of like 6th grade, it just started going downhill.
Terrell was searching for a sense of self, to understand where he came from, something his siblings couldn't understand.
They knew their dads, though. So they had who they could, you know, look in the mirror and see where they get all their stuff from and identify with. And then I'm the middle child. So it was like I always felt like an outcast. I didn't have somebody who I could say, that's my hero, or that's who I'm gonna be like.
Because nobody taught me how to be a man.
That made me get involved in the streets, you know, hanging out with the wrong people. I found a father in gangbanging.
By high school, Terrell's internal pain was showing on the outside. A classmate noticed he had been harming himself.
She grabs my arm and she's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, you know, I'm choked up. First of all, because I like her. She doesn't even know I like her. I'm like, "You're so beautiful." She gives me her number. She tears off a piece of notebook paper and writes her number down. And she's like, "Well, here's my number. Why don't you call me so we can talk about it?" And she was like, "It's gonna be all right." I loved her since that moment.
But that spark of hope, compassion, and understanding would be extinguished too soon.
And I cut on the news and she had got murdered. So it was like, that right there sent me into like a spiraling depression. You know what I mean? And I want to say like a couple of months after that was my first suicide attempt. I popped a bunch of pills and I called one of my friends and I'm like, "Yo, it's over." Like and that phone call of me reaching out to somebody was probably what saved my life, because they called everybody and they got me to the hospital, and I ended up being admitted after that. And I could say that was like the beginning of it.
The remarkable Pearson Phillips, a 12-year-old student who has dealt with depression and sought the help he needed so that he could be here with us right now. So, Pearson, will you share a bit of your journey with us?
So of course I will. Thank you to everyone here supporting suicide prevention. I live with mental illnesses.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry.
No.
In grade school, I made friends with this boy who was a few years younger than me. His name was Pearson. I would walk him from class to class every day because he was a little nervous.
I know the holidays can be hard for some people. So today, I'm gonna give some Christmas cheer.
She was not afraid to walk him down the hall full of middle schoolers and take care of him. She was someone who was kind to him and had no reason to be. And he valued that in a person. He valued that.
He's an incredible, intelligent, one-of-a-kind boy.
This isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning. Thank you.
Mental health is everybody's business.
'Cause I was the people with skeletons, with skeletons, with skeletons.
You're acting like you know me when you really don't know. Every sin I cast out the very first stone.
Her song Acting Like You Know was like his theme song. That their lives were so parallel in some ways, and so yeah, that was his song.
Waiting for the next fight.
Part of Kansas City's hip-hop royalty, Mackenzie Nicole landed a music deal before graduating high school. But as her first album hit the charts, something wasn't right.
There's this idea that somehow you brought this upon yourself, where you are destined to feel this way, you deserve this, you're supposed to be this way, and that's just not the truth. No one is supposed to be innately unhappy.
From the age of 6, Mackenzie believed her life would end in suicide. She would continue through the pain until she no longer could.
I think that might be one of the hardest things to overcome, though, when you're in that space, is how comfortable you get with the darkness.
At 18, Mackenzie found herself driving alone around Kansas City, ready to give up her life and her fight against mental illness.
I just started sobbing. I just lost it. I just broke down. So I called my mom and I told her, I'm going to kill myself. I told her, yeah, I'm just warning you that the expiration date's coming up, and I don't want you to be prepared when it happens, because it's going to happen. And I don't want to catch you off guard, and I feel like I owe that to you. And she said, no. She said, we got to slow down. That's not how this is going to happen. That's just simply not. All it took was that moment for me to realize maybe there is another option. Like, maybe she's right. And realizing, as I said it out loud to someone I love so much, my mom's my best friend, I realized how drastic it was, how serious it was. Killing myself, which I had always felt destined to do, was a big deal.
Slowly, with new determination, Mackenzie began to face her demons and get answers to what had been plaguing her for years.
You know, being diagnosed as bipolar 1 was the best news I had ever received. And I know being diagnosed with severe mental illness sounds actually like horrible news, but for me, it was the first time this faceless, shapeless, nameless beast had a face, a shape, and a name, and a kryptonite.
Pearson Phillips was navigating life as a middle school student in 2018. While balancing homework and friends, 13-year-old Pearson was also living with anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, so we don't really know why he felt this way. We don't know why he was having those thoughts.
Pearson had been in therapy since elementary school. His family determined there would be no stigma and no shame.
In order to change the story, we need to change the way people see mental illness.
This charismatic teenager even turning his own battle into a way to help others by speaking to groups across Missouri as a mental health advocate.
And that was really one of the other things he'd say, I want to make a difference. He really did.
But what no one knew, therapy was no longer helping. Neither was medication. Pearson even convincing his psychiatrist he was doing better, when in truth, his will to live was almost gone.
I think that's the biggest shock for me, was how did you fool him? So he was showing some self-harming behaviors, and I made sure that that was brought up. He completely talked his way out of that one, and I have no idea how. But you know, when you're supposed to trust the doctors, and when they tell you, I'm not concerned about this, you go, okay, I don't need to worry, thank you. Because you want to hear that. You want to hear they're okay.
Still to come on Chronicle.
It got to a point where I just realized that I was at the end of the line of being able to function.
When managing your mental health becomes unmanageable.
You need to focus on where you are in the moment, and let's get you treatment and then get you hooked up with some professionals that can help you cope.
Help is available right now. Look for a list of mental health resources at kmbc.com. At 17 years old, Terrell was deep in his battle with mental illness.
And this is when like the mental health stuff really starts, because it's like at this point everything's in shambles.
Running the streets, homeless, he spent time in and out of jail and solitary confinement.
They called it ISO. The name of the door was ISO. It was ISO. And I see this door every day. I was 23-hour lockdown. I got out for 1 hour to take a shower and call my mom. She was the only person that answered the phone. And they called me ISO. They called me ISO every day. And I was like, well, if I got to look at this and I got to be called this every single day, I need to make a positive out of this.
It was from inside that cell that Terrell's life slowly began to change from the inside out.
I started thinking positive thoughts about everything. So I was like, okay, I got to see these 3 letters, ISO. I shall overcome. I shall overcome. So every time I left my cell and came back and I seen the door, I'd say to myself, I shall overcome. Everything that I'm going through, this whole ordeal, I get out, I might be homeless, I don't know, but you know what, I'll overcome it. I shall overcome it all. And then that's what ended up being my artist name. Looking in the mirror, Harlem World War Me.
Terrell was becoming King ISO. He started writing music and searching for a label to give him a chance.
I would record and I would use this Wi-Fi system that was like this mechanic shop next door. And I would upload songs. Just, you know, talking about my life and talking about stuff I was going through. And then it generated like a buzz. And people was like, yo, boom, boom, bam. And, you know, fast forward all of that.
We got this. All right? Let's do it.
A lot of woofing going on from these new names lately. Don't never have a career, on 2K maybe.
You know, people like Tech Nine start hearing about me.
My youngins are mop you.
You know what I mean? Like, here I am.
I was at the end of the line of being able to function.
Once considered the future of the Democratic Party, Jason Kander was considering a run for the White House in 2018, but the trauma he experienced as a soldier in Afghanistan was silently taking over. Something had to change.
So that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna go home and I'm going to get help at the VA and I'm gonna run for mayor, because maybe I thought, and this is common I've found for trauma victims, I was in seek of some sort of redemption. And I felt like if I can go home to this town that I love so much and work for my neighbors exclusively, then maybe that'll be redeeming and I'll feel better.
He traded dreams of the presidency with becoming the next mayor of Kansas City.
We're probably gonna win and not by a little. And so that should have felt great. It was 99 days. One of them was good. Frankly, that was the day that I visited Veterans Community Project for a tour. And every other day just didn't feel good. And my nightmares were getting worse. And I mean, everything about it was getting worse.
It finally became too much. 11 years after leaving Afghanistan, Jason dropped out of the mayoral race to deal with his PTSD, posting on Facebook, "I found out that we were going to raise more money than any Kansas City mayoral campaign ever has in a single quarter. But instead of celebrating that accomplishment, I found myself on the phone with the VA Veterans Crisis Line, tearfully conceding that, yes, I have had suicidal thoughts, and it wasn't the first time."
I sat down with a clinical social worker at the VA. It was more of an intake, but she was a therapist, and she was asking me, okay, why did you go so long feeling as though you hadn't done enough to earn this? You were out for hours at a time, virtually by yourself. And she said, did anybody know where you were? And I was like, well, no. She said, so you were in the most dangerous place on the planet doing a dangerous thing, and you had essentially no possibility of anybody coming and backing you up if things went badly. And when she explained it to me that way, I was like, well, that actually sounds rather traumatic. And I mean, when they actually diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress, in a way that was freeing, because it was, oh, now I can start working on this. Like, now I understand what this is.
Mental illness is hard to talk about. Mental illness and suicide, even harder. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 90% of suicides are linked to mental health issues. This part of the story is hard to watch, but it's important to hear so we can together understand just how serious mental illness can become.
He was screaming at me, like, "Mom, I need to go talk to someone." And I had been trying to get him an appointment since November, and I have emails and everything, trying to reach them any way I could to get him an appointment. His appointment was for 10 days. I think it was 10 days after he died. And he didn't want to talk to me about it. That was the first time he didn't want to talk to me. His friends spent the night. The next day they were playing games and doing, everything was fine. He was on the couch with me, he put his head in my lap, and I just remember what we would do, our normal. He was just so depressed, and I asked him about trust. There was something about trust. And he wouldn't respond with verbally. I said, "Pearson, you can trust me." And he just shook his head no. And that was the strangest thing, because that was the first time he'd ever done that. And so the last thing I said to my son was that I love you no matter what. There's nothing you could ever do or say that would make me not love you, ever. And he just kind of looked at me and shook his head, and I left him to do what he was doing, never ever suspecting anything. And I hear this noise, and I don't know what it is. It's this loud noise, and it sounded like something fell. I'm like, oh, I'm not cleaning that up, is what I thought. And then I hear my husband scream my name, and I knew immediately what had happened. Immediately. So it's difficult to make that phone call and to tell 911. I had no idea. My husband wouldn't let me in the room. I saw my son, but I didn't get to see him. I just remember thinking, I'm so glad that the last thing I said to him was that I loved him. All that he left, he typed up a note to me saying, "I love you." That was it.
I was sitting at my cubicle at work one day, and I saw his mom had DM'd me on Instagram and asked if there was any way that they could get tickets for my upcoming concert. And I was like, yeah, we can work that out. I just thought, I'm gonna click on her profile and see how Pearson's doing. And then I saw the memoriam post. It had just happened the night before. I know, you know what I mean? I get it. I get how that happened to him. And it was almost me, and it made me really realize why I couldn't end up there, and why it was so important for me to take a different path than he unfortunately ended up on.
I've never had thoughts in my life, ever, until after my son died.
Hi, I'm Pearson Phillips. I'm 12 years old, and I am brave because I talk about mental illness without letting stigma and shame get in the way.
And I now understand how he felt when he talked about the pain. And I don't know how he battled that for as long as he did. It is hard.
Hillary spent the year after Pearson's suicide in a blur. Then COVID-19 brought everything to a halt.
I definitely went into a depression. but I was also forced to face the fact that my son was no longer with us, that he was not alive, he was not coming back. And I hadn't had to do that because I was able to throw myself back into work. And now I was forced to not do anything but just sit and be.
Hillary owns Bloom Hair Salon in Independence, Missouri. In the midst of the pandemic, the possibility of never reopening felt unbearable.
The thought of losing the salon, which my son was such a part of as well, that's what got me. That's what really kind of tipped me over the edge, was trying to walk through the PPP loans last year. It's the one moment where I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I want to die. And I can't handle this anymore.
Hillary knew she needed help. She reached out to find her will to live.
What I wish people...
Okay, wait, Mommy was holding that up too high, right?
Yes, okay.
Which meant learning to live without her son.
I had to face a lot of things, and I'm not always happy about having to do it, but I realize I can do it. But I really did work hard on coming to terms with the fact that he's not there anymore. And to be okay sitting there in the house, to be okay just being there instead of running away from it.
Hillary is not alone in her struggles, especially with COVID-19. The virus has claimed over 500,000 American lives and changed everything we used to know.
People have lost their coping skills, and I don't blame them. You know, we all have our different ways of coping with grief and loss, and people are witnessing loss around them on a daily basis.
Dr. Todd Hill is a psychiatrist at North Kansas City Hospital. He says mental illness reached epidemic proportions years before COVID-19. It's gotten worse during the pandemic, affecting young adults the most.
Anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, now that is on, everybody's mind. 1 in 4 young adults have contemplated suicide, and in the general population, 1 in 10. I think we need to talk to our kids and our college-age kids and younger adults about the suicide. Ask them about it. Keep in touch with their emotions. You may think you know your kid well, but they're bottling up a lot and they're not coping with it. I'm encouraging people to talk about this and talk about it in a constructive manner than a destructive manner, instead of all doom and gloom. Let's talk about where we are and where you want to be despite the pandemic. And you can be successful and you can survive within this pandemic, but it's a matter of having that mindset.
For Mackenzie Nicole, the pandemic has been difficult, mentally and physically. She tested positive for COVID-19 in the fall of 2020.
I'd say the worst thing for me, though, was the breathing. My lungs are still pretty messed up from it. I couldn't speak in full sentences because I would get winded.
Her mental health struggles also intensified.
So right now, you caught me at an odd time when I got the email that we needed to do this interview. It was, I felt bad because I felt sad that I couldn't report back with, I've really handled everything really well. I've really, I'm well adjusted and functional right now, because I'm not. Just picked up like 86 habits. If anyone is bipolar, they know. And then immediately hit a wall, hit a major depressive episode. Horrible. Thought this is going terribly. Started to climb back up, and then kept hitting wall after wall every month or so. In December of 2020, when I really started had hit a real downward spiral, and my psychiatrist diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder. Immediately, I entered into a partial hospitalization program at the psychiatric hospital, and ended up in now another program, a DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy program that I'm in the middle of doing. I'm about halfway through. I guess that's a lifelong process, You never get to a stopping point on that because people are living documents.
Still to come on Chronicle.
It's 2021 and people still don't believe that it's an illness. I don't get it.
The war within never ends, but it is a war you can survive. KMBC.com has a list of resources available in the Kansas City area if you or someone you love is struggling.
It happens, old habits. My heart is a magnet for Cupid's arrows and poison darts. I long will lead you from the dark.
It says, "My heart is a magnet for Cupid's arrows and poison darts." To me, that is the most important line off the album. And here's why. Because what that means when I wrote it and when I perform it now and when I sing it in my car is I am so sensitive and I'm so vulnerable. Human emotionality is this beautiful thing, but it's also what made me susceptible to the darkness, to the poison darts.
The music studio is a sacred space for Mackenzie Nicole. Her introspective album, Mystic, documents the mental health struggles that almost took her life.
I'm just a shadow of what I was, and I'm trying to make it out the woods.
Every song telling part of her story.
When I made Mystic, it was at a point where I felt like I was worth nothing and my experiences were worth nothing and nothing I made was worth anything. All of a sudden I had this thing in my hands that I loved and I created that like something good came from me.
Wait, but don't leave me alone. I wanna go home. I wanna go home. I wanna go.
I realized, man, if I can make something good, maybe I'm good. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. That I realized, A, how dark the darkness actually was, and B, how uninhabitable it really was.
Yeah, we fixed the problem we didn't even know we had.
I love you too, Dad.
You don't get a prize at the end of your life, like you don't get a gold medal or a little star sticker for accepting no help. Rejecting help on principle is one of the most foolish things you can do because no one at the end of your life is going to congratulate you for making yourself suffer. If anything, that's the least noble thing you can do.
I speak up because someone has to. Mental health is everybody's business.
I still don't know how I get up every day and do anything.
Nothing will ever replace her son, Pearson. Hillary is working to make sure he and other suicide victims are never forgotten.
We say they lived, they were loved, and they matter. They still matter. It's present tense.
The Pearson Project is a nonprofit dedicated to ending the stigma and shame surrounding suicide and mental illness, carrying on Pearson's legacy of helping others in need.
My parents are great, and they support me in being open about my anxiety and depression. They say they never want me to be ashamed of who I am. And guess what? I'm not. But life isn't always easy.
He was not ashamed of who he was. It was just a part of who he was, just like anybody else.
22 veterans a day take their lives, and I'm just really lucky that I'm not one of them, and now I'm excited to see what I do now and what I get to do.
His political career on pause, Jason Kander has found a new role at Kansas City's Veterans Community Project. While there's no cure for his PTSD, seeking help to manage his anxiety and depression has made a big difference.
Being able to feel emotions again and being able to operate in a way that's not exhausting and to get a good night's sleep and all these things, they're really great. And once you do it, it's like being able to see in color again. Hi, I'm Jason Kander, and I'm excited to tell you that Veterans Community Project is partnering with the KCBA to
Like one for all the fallen ones. Like so. Yeah. I feel like DMX where my dogs at. Neck is hella heavy from me wearing all these dog tags. On this lonely road I'm headed
I shut down for a little bit. I feel like we all probably had a slight little moment where it was like, I'm already in the house anyway. Let me just, no internet, no nothing. I just kind of want to sit here. But I say all that to say, there's a silver lining in that, because I feel like a lot of people were forced to really look in the mirror. That's something I got out of sobriety. I'm 2 months sober.
COVID-19 had one positive outcome for Terrell. It forced him to reevaluate the way he had been living.
I started reading more. I started reading a lot more. I'm a glutton for knowledge. I feel like those are things that I lost touch with from always moving around. So now I just, I learned how to draw inspiration from anything, even in those dark times.
He draws a lot of inspiration from his fans. Their emotional connection runs deep.
This is Terrell you getting right here. This isn't King ISO. And I took a what do you want to call it? I took a chance, like kind of rolling the dice and putting Terrell in my music. And I feel like, oh, well, that's probably why they accepted it more, because they're like, this isn't like some character he made. He's literally talking about his life, and this is him as a person.
King ISO addresses mental health at every concert, finding strength with the fans who are going through the same thing.
Now when I do these shows, I see them all in the crowd. They're all looking at me, and they're all waiting, for me to talk to them, by the merchandise booth when we're done. And I hear story after story, story after story. Like I said, the girl came up to me and said, I had a plan to kill myself after this show, but your last song made me change my mind. I just want to thank you. And she clenched me. I haven't been hugged that hard my entire life. And I didn't want to let go of her. And stuff like that, like I'll go sit backstage and I'll cry. Everybody like, everybody's out there, drinking, partying, whatever they're doing. I'll go step away from. I have to readjust myself. When you wake up in the morning and you feel like you can't get up out of bed.
The strength and hope King ISO gives his fans, they give back to him tenfold.
I could be having like the worst day ever, right? And somebody will write me or comment on an Instagram post or something, and it'll be a paragraph of just something so beautiful. They're like, I keep going for you. I keep fighting for you, and you make sure you keep fighting for us, and I love you. And if you haven't heard it today, you're an amazing person and you matter. And I'm like, okay, let me get up. Let me, clean this house up. Let me get my stuff together and let me do what I need to do.
It's me if you're wondering who I'm for with. Old version of me, sitting by a door, making plays all over me.
Mental illness can be overwhelming. It can be scary. It can be suffocating. But mental illness is never worth your life. If you are one of the millions fighting the war within, we have a special message just for you.
If you're struggling, I get it.
You are not alone at all.
I am, and honestly, I will continue to struggle with issues maybe similar to what you're feeling.
There is so much more than giving up.
1 in 4 people suffer from some form of mental illness. So do not be ashamed to go get help for this, and it will pay off in the long run.
There is somebody out there who understands. There is somebody out there that will listen. There is somebody out there that will get it and will offer their help.
So don't be ashamed ever to go ask for help.
You are not the special case that cannot be solved. You are not the exception to the rule.
There are a lot of people that you could inspire, lift, actually empower by not giving up. And I'm living proof.
Worst case scenario, it doesn't work. You try something else. That doesn't work, you keep trying.
Once you find somebody that you can connect with, continue to see them for follow-up and continue to tell your family around you, to kind of help keep an eye on you and support you as well.
You are capable of happiness, and you are capable of something other than the darkness you're feeling right now.
You are a human being that matters. You're a person that matters, just like all of us. And don't ever forget that.
I'm not perfect, but I'm better. You can be better too.
If you or someone you know needs help taking control of mental illness, we urge you to reach out and keep reaching out until you get the help you need. From all of us at Chronicle, good night.